All right. Welcome, everybody, to the KFS Postgame Show powered by BetUS. Macri, as is tradition, it seems, leaves me with a doozy of a game to postgame with you all. There's a lot to process there. I'll tell you how it could have gone, because as you all know, anybody who listens to any pods that I do or follows me on Twitter knows that I am not going to make any sweeping conclusions before really the 20 game mark. And so I am trying to remain extremely level-headed throughout this beginning stage of this experiment, this new team. This could have tested that resolve, because had this gone the way it looked like it was going to go midway through the third quarter, I was going to make some statements on here that were more definitive and negative than I've been allowing myself, because the effort was putrid. The energy was absent. The pride, frankly, was totally missing from a basketball team that I've become very accustomed to upholding their end of the bargain night to night in terms of effort and care. That was one of the worst 2.5 quarters in the Tibbs era. Like I couldn't believe what I was watching on some of those defensive possessions. Zero resistance. Zero pride. That's how it could have gone, and this would have been a whole different postgame. Then Karl-Anthony Towns, I thought primarily, finally decided to take some pride on the defensive end and made, I would say, 4 straight possessions of really good basketball plays defensively, 2 that caused turnovers, which began this crazy comeback, absurd comeback where he drove it with absurd ease of scoring. It is disturbing how easily that guy can score. It is so easy. And it was a wild run of both shot making and driving and dunking and fouls, and where the Knicks were in position to win this game. They were right there. And I think because there is a segment of the fan base who is questioning whether this team has the resolve and the attitude and the grit of last year's team, there was a moment tonight where I was going to come over to your side and say, maybe we're missing that. And I think that despite losing this game, and we'll get into the final moments, I actually come away feeling encouraged by the resolve. Because it on the second night of a back-to-back, getting your head blown in through 2.5 quarters, many of these guys played 40 minutes or close to 40 minutes last night. This is an easy game to punt. Chicago was making shots, to their credit. Zach LaVine was on fire. Didn't have it. They could have gone home tonight. And the fact that they didn't, I think, is significant and meaningful, and I think dispels some of the feelings that had crept into the discourse about this team's resolve and attitude and grit and care factor. And that was great to see. That this became as exciting a ball game as it became was a treat. The defense stinks. That no concerns about this defense were assuaged in this game. Like, their defense stinks. They have a long way to go to get to where we hope they can get to, average or better defensively. Like, there were portions of this game where I don't think I've ever seen a team score more easily than the Bulls scored. The offense is great. Like, nothing changed in terms of the outlook right now for this team to me. And certainly nothing about the last few moments of the game is going to change anything. The fact that Josh Hart commits a foul, we can debate the degree to which it was a foul. I think it was a reckless closeout, probably in that situation. You're not going to change my mind about Josh Hart and like the fact that he should close games for this team. He's made too many big plays already in his Knicks career to like start getting on him too much. It was a bad foul, bad play. Okay. And I'm certainly not going to change my opinion about Jalen Brunson because a shot came as close to going in as is humanly possible and yet didn't, after making 2 clutch buckets to put them in that position and coming within a fraction of an inch of sending them to a crazy win. My opinion is not going to change about Jalen Brunson. It's not going to change about many guys on the roster, if any. Like, that's not what this game was about to me. But there is a significance and a meaning. There's a weight to me, to the fact that they dug somewhere where we have not seen them dig yet. We didn't see it against Boston, certainly. We didn't see it against Indiana, as Indiana blew their doors off in the fourth quarter. Like, to have that fortitude to somehow find it, that was an element that I had not seen yet. The doubt was starting to creep in there. And ultimately, they found a way to give themselves a legitimate chance to win the game. And they didn't win the game. They will win games like this. Close games with Jalen Brunson closing and Karl-Anthony Towns on offense doing what he does. We should get into the defensive issues. There will be time to continue to get into the defensive issues. I will probably do a film session tomorrow on the defensive issues. Those aren't going away. The offense is powerful. Karl-Anthony Towns is a uniquely powerful weapon at the 5. But that to me is the takeaway. Out of everything, to me, the takeaway is, okay, there's a fight and there's a pride and there's a care factor that I think some of us were worried about. So I am positive, I am sure that there will be a lot of negative super chats tonight. I get it. That is a crushing loss. And the frustration of the first 2.5 quarters shouldn't just be dismissed. That effort was embarrassing. So I'll get there with you. We can get angry about it. And yet I find myself, as the game ended and I'm sitting there on my hands and knees as that ball rims out, I found myself thinking, all right, at least there's some spirit to this team. And that is my chosen main takeaway. I don't know if I've convinced you, but that's where I'm at. We could talk about the individual performances. Cat is the standout. That was just an absurd display of elite scoring that very few guys in the league can reach. He's a very special offensive player. Cam Payne, I think, is number 2 because, man, I was like, hey, let's just give Kolek a shot at some points, and he showed you why he's going to have a role on this team until there's like a very convincing evidence that he should not. He played great. He was integral, essential to that run. The shot making, but not just the shot making. He made all his shots tonight. His spirit defensively, his energy that was desperately needed on a night when obviously the starters didn't have it. That's what you're looking for from Cam Payne, is like, come in and give a burst of energy. Hadn't really seen that to any great extent so far this season. I thought tonight was a classic example of what he can provide to this team. That was great to see. OG was stuck in the mud tonight. I didn't think he was particularly impactful defensively nearly as much as he normally is. I was a little surprised that he didn't really get a consistent shot to guard Levine. Mikal Bridges had that assignment. I think the idea was because you had some lesser offensive players on the floor, whether it was Patrick Williams or Terry, it allowed him to roam, especially when the Knicks were trapping up high. So OG was on the back line defending, filling in those gaps. I understood it from that perspective, but at some point with Levine just going absolutely bonkers, especially at the end of the first half, put your best defender on him. But yeah, OG played the most minutes last night, has been playing out of his mind, didn't really have a ton to offer tonight. Still had a few dunks, had his moments, but it was probably the worst OG game of the season, I would say. Bridges, man. Interesting Bridges game. I thought his contribution with Brunson out, kind of leading that offense with Cat and Payne, I thought he made some big mid-range jumpers. He made one big three. Some of the threes still look terrible. Defensively, there's something just lacking, though. And that's still my biggest concern, even though the shot is I am monitoring and slightly concerned and wondering when it's going to come around. The lack of impact defensively, just a way that I don't feel like anybody is feeling him. Like LaVine was like, even though he forced him into some tough turnarounds, like it never felt like LaVine was bothered whatsoever by Mikal Bridges' defense. And that is troubling, considering, again, and we're always going to go back to this because that it is what it is. The picks, the amount of picks that were traded to get this guy on the assumption that he's an elite defender, that he can take a lead ball handler and limit him. And we just haven't seen it consistently enough, certainly. And I would say more often than not, we have not seen it. Like, to the negative, we have not seen it. I didn't think tonight was any different, but some good flashes offensively and one of his better games offensively for sure. And so progress, but we still need more on the defensive end from him. Josh Hart did a lot of Josh Hart things, made some huge plays in transition. The last play just sucks. What are you going to do? It sucks. And Brunson, weird game. In the first half, he basically could take whatever shot he wanted. I thought he could have had 30 in the first half. He actually had a decently efficient, whatever he had, 18 or something, but I felt like he left a ton on the table. Second half, they tightened up on him, and they go on the big run without him on the floor. So it's not a great Brunson game. I know the numbers he finished with are okay, and he made 2 super clutch shots. You can't discount that. I still want the ball in his hands down the stretch of games. He's ice cold in those scenarios. The last shot sucks it didn't go, and that could have been a really cool moment. Still don't feel like Brunson's quite found his superstar level. And the numbers will tell you he's still been really excellent. But I think anybody who watched him last year through the playoffs, like, understands that he's not quite at 100% Jalen Brunson. He's also, I should mention, he pretty badly tweaked an ankle last night. And so I don't know how much that was affecting him, but it's fair to wonder if it was. So that's Brunson. Did I miss anybody? I thought Deuce in the first half made some terrible decisions. Rim reads, that terrible shot selection, but he made enough plays in the second half. He was on the floor during that run. Defensively, I thought he held his own. He did a good job. Wasn't nearly Deuce's best game of the season, but he still provided the spark. Sims barely played when he was in there. He was kind of okay. Nothing. I didn't think anything stood out bad or good. I think that's pretty much the roster. I think I covered everybody. And with that, yeah. So again, understand crazy. I was apoplectic after the first 2.5 quarters. I was rejuvenated the last quarter and a half. I found some spirit as the team found spirit, and that's where I'm choosing to go with this as kind of my conclusion. And hope that will remain positive. Look, team's under 500 again, but I still think there's a lot to look forward to, a lot to be excited about as they are trying to figure this out. So with that, Andrew.
Hey, Benjy. How are you?
I'm good. He leaves me with the doozies. This was a crazy game.
I will say this wasn't the normal doozy that he leaves you with. It was 2.5 quarters of it looking that way. But no, you got the one that hurts.
Oof.
You know?
What was your pose as that shot rimmed out?
A lot of couldn't believe it. For those honestly, watching, just hands over my face.
I really felt bad for Hart. You saw his reaction as that ball rimmed out. Like, that's not like something that you expect from him. And he made a lot of big plays in that game. What a shame. What a freaking shame they couldn't pull that out. Do we have any other segments that I need to hit before we hit the shadows?
Well, our first segment is the autograph signature moment of the game. So shout out to Autograph, our friends at Autograph. You can download the Autograph app wherever you have a cell phone, wherever your app store is, whether it be Apple, Android. I actually don't know if any other phone exists. Download the Autograph app though, and follow the Knicks Room. I believe John does little segments on there, the 3x3s. He goes live before games sometimes, so check that out on the Autograph app. Do I need to say what the signature moment of this game was? I can't believe that didn't go in. I'm gonna load up the photo, but let me ask you what your signature moment was that you thought, oh, they might act like the comeback's on, because they had some fake comebacks to start, but they weren't getting stops. So what was like the moment you thought this comeback might actually happen?
Yeah, so I'm trying to find the exact play that I'm talking about. Let's see if I have. Yeah, it's here. So the score is 90-74 with 2.5 minutes left in the third.
Okay.
So we say a quarter and a half. It was a 16-point game with it's really less than that of the actual comeback. And I'm sitting there waiting for somebody to show some defensive pride. Not one guy just decided I'm going to dig in and make a play. Even if I foul, I need to make a game-changing defensive play. And the last person I really expected to do that was Karl-Anthony Towns. But with 2:30 left in the third quarter, Josh Giddey's driving a closeout on Deuce McBride. I'm watching it right now live. And Cat just sticks his hands in. Just literally to two hands, like he didn't get in front of him. He just stuck two hands in, stripped the ball, or Giddey kind of then had to fling it back out. Bridges gets the steal. They get two going the other way. That was the first possession where I felt like someone tried to make a play. Like someone actually tried to make a defensive play, and it worked. And that kind of started the snowball. So that, to me, is a signature play. Like, I identified that right away. I said, that is the first play like that all game long. And by the way, he backed it up with 3 more defensive plays on the next 3 possessions that really got the ball rolling. So there's your signature play. Signature moment of the game presented by Autograph is a random Josh Giddey turnover with 2.5 left in the third quarter, which I thought gave the Knicks their first glimmer of hope.
That was 90-74?
90-74.
So mine will be 2 plays later when Campaign hit a 3 to make it 90-79. And it was like, oh, we're getting a Campaign game, after I was saying earlier that I mean, you've also said this, but like I'm here for the Kolek switch whenever Tibbs is ready. And if the question is, can Tyler Kolek defend? And I would respond with, can Campaign offend? Well, he was offending tonight. That's for sure. You know, listen. Yeah. I just one last look to drive the point home. How does this not go in? How is this not a made field goal?
Jeez, look at that.
We're looking at it for those listening on the feed. We're looking at the ball in the cylinder about halfway down.
That's the
red light
truly
on.
Like halfway down is overused. It's often not actually halfway down. That is truly halfway down. You can see half the ball above the cylinder.
Yeah.
Wow.
You could even argue there's more ball in the rim than
that
out
is
of the rim.
Some shot.
Yeah. So
brutal.
Extremely.
Look, the margins are very fine when it comes to winning basketball games. The Knicks actually in this game, I would say, it's funny. Like it felt like they gave away the game in the first almost 3 quarters, and to think that it came down to a ball spinning out, but it shows you got to value every possession. The Knicks certainly did not do that tonight. They did not value half the game, if not more. So yeah. Hopefully there's a lesson learned there. Maybe it's a back-to-back thing. I don't think that excuses the level of pathetic basketball that was played. It excuses some of it, but not all of it. And again, no sweeping conclusions, but you got to value the possessions, every possession of every game. And I do think it's a bit of a trend now where have we really seen them come out of the gate and get it to a 10-point lead early? Maybe Detroit.
Detroit and Milwaukee.
Milwaukee too. Yeah, that's true.
And to an extent, Indiana, because that I think is the thing. They're catching teams on the right night, and then they go run and hide. You know, there hasn't been this. I think was the first competitive game that we've seen where it went one way and then one team came back. You know, the Celtic game was a blowout from the beginning, and there was never really a game after that. You know, the Miami game was back and forth the whole time. Every other game was back and forth the whole time. Which is why I think this was. I mean, I had the same conclusion you did. The fact that this looked like it was headed toward a blowout, and I even said to myself in the third quarter, this team last year makes a run, and I don't know if they have that this
And I was
year.
gonna, and I was planning kind of, obviously as the game goes on, you're thinking about what you're gonna say when you come on here, and I was gonna talk about how like at some point in the game, Hartenstein gets a block at the rim.
Yep.
That just changes the whole tenor of the game. Or honestly, sometimes Julius bowls over 3 guys on an offensive rebound and yells at the crowd, and that gets the team going. Like some energy injectors. They didn't. Where was that going to come from tonight? And man, Cat just like decided to totally take over the game for a solid quarter.
Cat and campaign. Cat and campaign. Who knew?
The two most important acquisitions. No shots at you, Mikal Bridges.
Clearly. The Nets come into town over the weekend, by the way.
Some positive signs on the offensive end.
Yes.
I think that's clear. I'm very surprised and slightly disturbed by the lack of defensive substance. It feels like guys are kind of going through them right now.
I didn't like that because you mentioned the turnarounds that LaVine was taking on him. Those you live with. Those are tough shots from a gifted scorer. I didn't like how much LaVine was taking him off the dribble, and it was unimpeded.
It's funny. I agree. Obviously, I agree with you that like contested mid-range fadeaways are not good shots, and like you live with them as a defense, and you don't want to send help and then put yourself in rotation. I don't know how to explain it other than to say sometimes those shots look like they're actually difficult, and sometimes they don't. And defenders change the feelings of those shots, and I just never felt like LaVine was even an inkling outside of his comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that bothers me.
Him having the comfort to take those shots is
and the way he took them, it was just like he knew he was getting to the move. No one forced him a different way, and it was just like easy. And I know they're not great shots, but you can just feel like he wasn't missing them. You could say similar, by the way, for like Vucevic's backdowns on Cat to the left hand, but we don't have to talk about that.
Yeah.